started the next. And so I'm happy to finally return to your show.
Yes, it's an honor.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah, I'm telling you, it's such a, thank you so much, Doc, for being here. You know, I knew that there was no one else I would want to talk to about the economy and what we are and what we can be, other than you. Because when I first heard about your book, I went ahead and I bought it, you know, and we chatted briefly. You came on my show when I was at Star, and it was a wonderful, wonderful conversation, because I realized then that, okay, I may not have known the economic model per se or given it a name, but I knew that there was something wrong with the one that existed, and that it definitely was based on this scarcity idea. And I think I shared with you before, Doc, how I was watching this commercial. You remember the Pillsbury commercial? I think I shared that with you. And how the mother, the two sons were fighting over this last croissant. And right when they were going to go for it and fight over this last croissant, the mother came out of the kitchen with this basket of it, and it hit me. There's always more, but why do we fight over the little as if there's not more? Is there a culture where, or people who know that there's more, and we as a people are living in scarcity? But then your book says the entire economic model is built and based on scarcity. So, Doc, let's talk about it. What is, first of all, why did you name your book Tomato Economics?
Because the tomato symbolized to me and demonstrated for me abundance. I am what I call a pretend gardener. I garden whatever grows easily in my yard. And so I happen to have these this multitude of these cherry tomatoes just growing all over the place.
Oh, wow.
And I was at a retreat years ago, and we were discussing economics, we were discussing the world generally, and it just hit me in that moment that there's no such thing as scarcity, that scarcity is created, because the natural order of things is for reproduction, is for more, is for better, is for abundance.
Natural order.
Yeah, and because with the tomato, like I said, not only am I a pretend gardener, I'm also a pretend scientist.
I don't know about that pretense there, but we will go with it.
So what I did was, I did an experiment, because I did do science in high school, so I have a clue. And so I just cut open the tomatoes, and I saw how many seeds was in one tomato. So that's telling me that this one tomato can produce, in one case, I think there were 40, there were 60 in one seed tomato, there were 20, there were different amounts, but there was sufficient, more than sufficient seeds to reproduce this plant. But on top of that, each plant had more than one tomato on it.
Ah, yes.
So there was an exponential amount of possibilities for tomatoes. So if I had a clue about gardening, from this one plant, I can get thousands of tomato plants, over time. And so for me, that symbolized, the fact that there is enough. And for me, that's all abundance means, that there is enough. And so that's how I got to call it Tomato Economics.
I thank you so much for that, because that's a great story. And I love the fact that you said, one vine had tons of tomatoes, but you look in one and there's more of its kind. It's like wanting to reproduce after itself and create abundance in nature. And I love that, because your book hits so well, because for me, it touches on the natural and the spiritual for me, right? Where you can understand the concept so fundamentally. And in our faith construct, we should be living in this abundance. But you even mentioned in your book about how some religions create, or even in our religion, our belief of Christianity also creates this sort of scarcity type God in confliction of itself, in conflict of itself, where it talks about he is more than enough, but
Yeah.
yet he's seemingly the God for a few.
Yes, like dishing out for this group, dishing out for the next group, and then you have to always be begging this God for the
Yeah.
gifts that are natural out there.
Yeah, yeah. And I love that. And so, okay, here is
And
something.
so for me, and just let me interject here, you talk about the natural and the spiritual, there's not one without the other.
Mm,
And if you look at what we do is a reflection of our spirituality, of our core belief system. So if our core belief system, for example, is that persons of African descent are less than human because the God that we worship that isn't African, then it circumscribes our entire way of living. We as Africans, we already feel inferior. Those who are the superior or the real humans, well, they're in line with this God. So that God is choosing certain people to have certain things and certain people not to have certain things.
yeah, that's fascinating. Yeah, I mean, when you say it really, truly, if this is the construct that we believe in, it really explains a lot about even how we think, right? It's that
Right.
it has shaped our willingness to subscribe to an economic model that is not in the best interest of anyone. I have some excerpts from your book, and I wanted to touch on some of them. And and you notice in my text, I said, well, Doc, I think this needs to be a series because we can't get through all of it. Because there is, you have a chapter in the book just at the beginning called the scarcity paradigm, and the progenies, I think it's called the progenies of scarcity.
Progeny of a scarcity, yes.
Oh, that was brilliant. Just starting the book off, right? People, you got to get this book, Tomato Economics. I feel like Doc should be lecturing everywhere, like in your town hall, in your churches. She needs to share this. This a word. That's what I call this book, a word. All right, Doc. So this is something that at the beginning of the book, and you have scarcity is the underlying premise that guides mainstream economics. It is the idea that there are insufficient resources to fulfill the unlimited wants and needs of people. This is the antithesis of God. Any teaching of scarcity as a universal law of how the world and the universe are designed and works is spiritual dishonesty. I mean, I don't know if you remember you wrote that.
Well, to be honest, I had to go and read the book because I was coming on. I had to flip through the pages to remind myself.
But that's a word, though. That's a word. And when you look at economics from your van, okay, as a professor of economics, you stand in a model that has been written by different authors. Like we have different ways of looking at the Keynesian approach. We've got all kinds of different approaches to this thing. We got a Friedman writing of it. We've got all kinds of studies on economics. But all of them create this narrative of scarcity from your position, correct?
Correct. Because any introductory textbook and any textbook is going to tell you economics is the study of how we allocate scarce resources. That's a premise. Look in the principles of economics textbooks. It's about scarcity. And so it sets up a construct, a context. So every economic model then must, because of the assumption of scarcity, demonstrate scarcity. If the very premise on which you're starting is, for example, this student cannot learn, that everything you do is in furtherance of the fact that the student cannot learn. If you start off with the fact that there is not enough to go around, then you set up a paradigm such that there will never be enough to go around. And there's something wrong with the system now that shows that there is enough to go around because it goes against what we know to be true, that we made this basic assumption of scarcity.
And it's so crazy, well, not crazy, so amazing that this is the, you know, the premise of your book, which I love. The reason why is that I look at our society and everything is about the one pie. And we're all fighting over this one pie. We call ourselves black. We have this black crab syndrome where we are fighting and tearing each other down. And it's known, we don't like it, but we expect it to remain the norm.
Mm-hmm.
And as a developing nation,
Mm-hmm.
right, as a third world country, a part of being third world is the expectation that you will never have the resources. One of the things that is constantly said about us is, hey, listen, of the Bahamas, you have no natural resources. You have no resources.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing you have is tourism. When you look at the model of the Bahamas, what do you see?
Well, this is we could be on this topic for weeks.
That's why I said it's a series, for sure.
Okay. The basis on which the Bahamas was founded was not just on scarcity, but it was on violence and oppression, which is in furtherance of the scarcity, because some people are entitled to have. So, for example, after emancipation, quote unquote emancipation, we were not given land, as opposed to another group of people who were able to get land and who were granted land, for example. Throughout our history, a certain group of people have been more privileged than others.
Yes.
And we still are reeling from that fact, because the underlying structure of scarcity, that one, there is not enough, and therefore it's okay if some have more and others have none. But I want to go back to the third world, the language. Listen to the language of the third world, developing, all of which are constructs to ensure that we stay exactly where we are. Think about it. From the after World War II, and into the 1950s and 60s, we've been working on this developing thing since forever. How many countries you know have become developed with all these years and everything we've been doing to develop countries?
Yes, all of this aid.
The IMF, the World Bank, the UN, the this, the that, and the next. Because the whole idea is, it's okay for the so-called developing countries to stay exactly where they are, because there isn't enough. It doesn't matter that those countries that we call developed benefited so much from the vast resources of these now so-called developing countries. So we want to be careful, and this is something I always want to emphasize, is the language we use also is perpetuating a paradigm.
Yes.
And so when I use the terms developed country, developing countries, it's either so-called or it's inverted commas or something, because it's a language that's been placed on us that has us participating in the scarcity.
So it's that designation, like we have already designated ourselves as third. That's our ranking.
Right.
We are always seeing ourselves as clawing up to meet higher power, when if we were just to be all nations and we are where we are, would, you know, that the wording itself and how we talk about ourselves is the same thing in faith talk. What is it? The speak of yourself, no. From the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaketh, right? Sort of that. Something like that. But it's really that designation that affects your mindset. So when you say it, it becomes you.
Yes.
Something that you have in your book, something else I wanted to share that I thought was pretty cool, and you have this here, this model. You can tell I was doing homework, right, Doc? Tell I was doing homework. I was prepping for you today.
Uh-huh.
This is something when you were talking about just before we even went into the positioning of the naming or the construct. You when we were talking about the Bahamian economy, you kind of mentioned a few things that I sort of remembered in your book, and I wanted us to talk about just in terms of the different type of economies, right? And you mentioned emancipation, and I wondered if we started off being a slavery economy, but I wanted folks who aren't able to see what I have on screen here, is that you mentioned 5 different types of economies. Would this be correct, what we're looking at?
Yeah, well, these are different nomenclatures. So you have a slave economy, socialist, we had feudalism, mercantilism. Now, in the height of capitalism, you could put globalization in there as well. They're just different names, all based on the concept of scarcity.
Oh, and you know what surprised me? Socialism. Socialism, you know, in the United States, they view socialism, or they talk about socialism as well as the state is taking care of everybody, and it is scarcity but anti-capitalism. So everyone is equal in the socialist position, but it's anti-capitalism, and capitalism is great, but socialism is bad. But if all are in the same boat.
But you see, even the idea of either or is a scarcity mentality. Either I'm capitalist or I'm socialist. I can't be both. You know, I have to be either or. And that's a language of scarcity. When you only have a choice between this and that, that's not really a choice. When you have a choice between bad and badder, it's not really a choice, you know. And so for me, when I write, I usually write in terms of talking about a dominant economic system, what is prevailing at a particular point in time, in these times. I'm not concerned so much with the labeling. I'm concerned and more interested in what is this economy doing?
Yes,
How
yes.
is it functioning? And what happens is when I, for example, criticize this dominant economic system, oh, well, you're a socialist and therefore you are bad.
Yes, and that's what I'm seeing happening.
Yeah,
I mean,
and it's a dichotomy that isn't served, that does not serve us at all as humanity, in humanity.
I think that's so interesting that you say that, because when you do question or challenge this model, that many Bahamians, I think a lot of us are growing quite aware that this model was never built to have successful nations and people, right? It was built to have a successful few, and it's you know, I used to play this game. I still love it to pieces. Cash Flow by Robert Kiyosaki. And one of the tenets of the game, of course, you have to get out of the rat race, right? So when opportunity meets you, you have to be able to jump onto opportunity. But when you get out of the rat race, the more you have, the more you attract, and it's just constantly magnetic. It's fascinating within the game, and they say within life that the more that you have, the more that you get for free.
It's a drug.
It is.
It is so appealing. And if you think about this dominant economic system, it does appeal to our baser instincts, our baser characteristics as human beings. So in my greed, I really don't care what happens to the next person. The next person doesn't have, because they're just downright lazy. They didn't take advantage of this, they didn't do that, and on and on. And we make up all sorts of excuses to rationalize why we can have 12 meals a day and others not even possibly one meal a day. So the problems of the so-called developing world is their problem. And we're going to be nice and try to help them, not understanding or appreciating or accepting how this model functions. It functions by taking away from people.
Period.
Others can get more. And you're in a game. You're in a game, like you said, for this pie. You don't make the pie. You didn't contribute
No.
to you didn't even write the recipe for this pie.
Mhm.
And it's your fault that you don't know how to play the game.
That's right. That's right. And they don't even give you the tools
No,
effectively to even cut a slice of the pie.
because I mean, let's go back to the Bahamas, for example. When it comes to basic education,
Yes.
we didn't really start to get, even when the government high school was established in the early 20th century, it was for a very select few, such that the bureaucratic machine can operate, essentially,
Oh,
because the
wow.
country was growing. Then remember, there was one public school. All
Mm,
the others was segregated. They were for a particular group of people, not for the general African population that was the majority.
yeah.
So even when we look at our education system, we're already, from that time, we created a scarcity paradigm for the vast amount of people. Now let's go back to something else you also said. We have absolutely no resources. We can't do anything. We can't grow anything. We da da da. But with all the no resources that we have, we know that persons and corporations have gotten filthy rich off of the nothing that we have to offer.
Preach, Doc. Preach.
And so it isn't a question that there isn't enough, it's who's to get it.
That's right.
It's the allocation of the resources and the whole basic tenets on which we're going to function. So it's the basic tenets that Bahamians are essentially the servants of other people so that the other people can get rich, as opposed to on a more abundant thinking is that this economy is for Bahamians to become wealthy, however you describe wealthy, in terms of not just material things, but in terms of general well-being.
Doc, you're hitting everything that I believe is so true, because you hit education, which was a big thing to me, where I look at education and I think it's a great example of inequality, because if I don't have income, and you can see the difference, but people who have some sort of resources will always send their children to private school, right? And in hopes and in believing, and sometimes rightly so, that the education in a private school that I have to pay for is better than the one that the government or the state provides. And therefore, if I have no money, my child is at some sort of disadvantage. And I'm a young lady who came up in the public school system. And I can tell you, I thought I was smart until I went to UB and then realized being valedictorian in public school may not count. You know what I mean, Doc? So and that to me was a glaring insight. But there were opportunities in government schools that I don't know if private school students got that helped to sharpen some of the skills that I have today. So there are some benefits of it. But that wasn't always an issue for me in terms of this is continuing the divide, right? But let's take a break. When we come back, more with Dr. Olivia Saunders here on the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. Don't forget, y'all, Tomato Economics, you got to get this book. I mean, go on. It's right in the Amazon store. Where you think I got mine? Mine is in my Kindle. Every time I need to brush up, I brush up. And I think, again, brilliant Bahamians. I don't know why we are anywhere else but building, using the resources of our human resources inside this country. But we're going to come back and talk about the economy that exists today and which models are we in the book. And 2020 COVID-19, geez, how is the model of scarcity helping us now? God knows if we switched our mindset to the tomato mindset, where would we be? You're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. We will be back right after this.
It's the beginning of the hurricane season, and Fidelity Bank is giving you one less thing to worry about. We're not able to control a storm or its path, but we can prepare for it as much as possible. With every debt consolidation loan, Fidelity is giving away fully loaded hurricane kits valued at $200 with all the hurricane essentials you'll need to weather the unexpected storms of life. It's that easy. Sign up for a debt consolidation loan, open an ASO savings or fixed deposit, and walk away with a free hurricane kit. At Fidelity, we're committed to helping you through these difficult times. Fidelity, we're good for you.
With the outbreak of COVID-19, we find ourselves having to be more self-sufficient, socially aware, and technically savvy. At J.S. Johnson, we remain committed to our customers during this global pandemic. Our Nassau and Freeport branches are open to assist you remotely, Monday to Friday, between 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Call 397-2100 or email info@jsjohnson.com. Be safe, Bahamas. J.S. Johnson Insurance Agents and Brokers, giving you peace of mind.
This is Guardian Radio, 96.9 FM, Nassau, Bahamas.
And we're back. You're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. For the record, y'all, don't forget, Floral Fantasia is open for all seasons and occasions. Mount Royal Avenue, fully reopened for walk-ins, phone-in businesses, as well as pickup and deliveries. They offer a full array of floral arrangements, fresh and silk flowers, and gift baskets for all occasions. My husband knows that I love me some flowers. I won't tell you. Not flowers, sorry, baskets. I like single roses. Yeah, that's me. Boy, there was one time, though, he got me this arrangement. It was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. It was like in a log, gorgeous stuff. Fantasiaflorist.com. You can visit their website, fantasiaflorist.com, FANTASIA florist.com, or give them a call at 328-8655 or on WhatsApp at 376-7313. So we've got none other than Dr. Olivia Saunders here. Doc, always a pleasure. I'm so happy that you're here with us. So now, the model that exists today, COVID-19 as a global pandemic, and I thought it was so fascinating as it's happening, Doc, I won't lie to you, as a global pandemic has affected the world's economy, right? And the globalized world, you know, us in this multinational, multi-layered, everybody, you know, this WTO society, that economies are falling apart, right? And some worse than others because of poor leadership, but that's a whole other story for another day. But in terms of the model of globalization, capitalism, there are some winners and a lot of losers, right? Amazon is winning because it's right in the right space, the right age. I think Apple is still winning. There's some companies that are still winning, MNCs. When you look at the world though, what is someone who, as Dr. Olivia Saunders, who's written the Tomato Economics book, who looks at scarcity as this economic model that's prevalent in today's society, what was the main thing or the first thing that came to mind as you watched economies start to fall apart, and in particular ours? What crossed your mind?
Well, this global pandemic is really showing the, let's say, limitations of the current dominant economic system. You have, for me, I question an economic model or an economic system that collapses when there's a need to save human beings. What kind of system is this? We saw after Dorian, we have an economic system that requires the Bahamas government to go into huge debt to save people. The more debt the government goes into, the worse off we all are. Because you're talking more taxes, you're talking about more dependency on other people to tell us how we're going to function. This pandemic is showing throughout the world that human beings are subordinate to profits. are subordinate to even having this economic system prevail. It's more important for this economic system to prevail than human beings to live.
That's deep.
I'm not criticizing our government, but opening up is an imperative in this economic model, notwithstanding the threat to the human lives.
Yep, you're right. The model has to
And I
survive.
say that because I don't know if they really have a choice because of our situation in the world economy. But as you said, we're part of a global system. We don't set the rules. We just,
On for the ride?
on the bench. We on the sideline. When they feel like it, they contact us and say, "Oh, what
That's
you
it.
but we don't control the world economic system.
Not even close. Not
No.
even close. And you said something so wonderful. You said it's more pertinent, more prevalent to save this economic model than to save human lives.
Mhm.
One of the things that I saw, that I continue to see, Doc, what COVID has revealed to us,
Mhm.
how many human beings in this economic model that has been built and constructed, the scarcity model, where a few winners, there are a few winners, and everyone else is a part of that that cog that helps the winners to continue to win.
Mhm.
Is that when you build societies like that, in the face of a global pandemic, the whole system will come to ruin.
Or
Right?
any crisis.
Any
Like
crisis.
a hurricane or any kind of crisis. And what happens, like you said, and what is happening now, of course, is that those who are already winners previously, the vast majority are winning even more. And those of us on the outside, on the periphery, we're now becoming more and more beggars.
Yes. And more beggars, and losing more and more control.
And exactly.
And that is what, I think this is what is breaking the human spirit.
Mhm.
And somehow though, Doc, what I also see is that we are a part of wanting to reinstate the old system.
Mhm.
Listen, get it back up and running. Some people might have to die, but we can't. We're dying now by not eating.
Mhm.
And we're still asking for the old system,
Mhm.
not knowing any other option.
Yeah.
What is the other option when you look at it through the tomato economic model?
Well, for me, I I try to avoid prescriptions because every place has its unique paradigm. And one of the biggest ways on which the scarcity model has uh, continued is because somebody else was telling us how we should be running our lives. So I try to avoid telling other people how to run their lives. So even as we run our life here in New Providence, that's a different kind of life than if I'm in Cat Island or if I'm in Long Island.
Very true.
But at the same time, you have to appreciate that we're all connected as human beings, but also to nature. And so I'm not going to say, well, we should do this, we should do that, but we should have a basic philosophy about what kind of society we want to have.
Yeah.
Do we want to have a society where, for example, when UWI was started, the Bahamas was approached to join? They said, no, we don't need these university students. We don't need only university graduates, so we're not going to participate in the University of West Indies. So we have to decide, first and foremost, what kind of society we want. Now, one of the things COVID should have showed us is that we don't need 50 pairs of shoes and 40 handbags.
Yes. Yes.
So we've been chasing after material things, and that's the basis on which our economy is run. And it's also run on a debt-based system because all of us, why we're in such a mess is because of debt, because we can't go without a paycheck.
That's right.
The vast majority of us cannot go without a paycheck. And the idea of scarcity is that we have this group of people who will always be on the treadmill, going
Yeah.
nowhere, and having to run faster and faster even to stay in that one place.
That one bracket, yeah.
Yeah. So for me, in the book, if I remember correctly what I wrote, it speaks to a society of connectedness and appreciating human beings. It's for the benefit of human beings and not just data and statistics. So yeah, when I write my articles, I'll talk about the GDP growth, but it's meaningless if you have people starving.
Yeah.
And we don't even, what are the data that we will be collecting? Is it the data about how well our students are doing? How many of our graduates can speak a foreign language? Is it about how we are participating as neighbors with each other? Or are we just going to stick with the unemployment rate is this, the GDP is that, the inflation rate is, which are essentially meaningless?
Right. They're indicators of numbers, but not indicators of true progress.
And well-being of people.
That's right.
And how well, and even, for example, how do you value that mangrove that's being destroyed? Because the only model we know is we have to sell off all our land and
That's right.
destroy the mangroves.
Doc, you're speaking my language. You're speaking my language.
So it's a scarcity, but if you listen very carefully, it's a scarcity model, but for some, it requires excess. And because they're getting the excess, you should be happy with whatever it is you get.
Yeah, and be appreciative, very appreciative.
Be appreciative of it.
When I look at it, if you're just tuning in, Dr. Olivia Saunders, lecturer at the University of the Bahamas, author of Tomato Economics, and PhD economist, like a real, like high-end smart woman. That's what I, Doc. Luckily, I didn't have to pay for this lecture you're giving us, so I'm happy. When I look at it, Doc, why I say you're talking my kind of why I love you is because to me, it's just so right. However, I look at other models, right? So I look at other countries who have figured out ways to be successful. And I believe that success is very intentional. It's not, you can get lucky, and that's when something happens and you hit something and some people notice you or something good. But if you didn't, you can get lucky, right? But success is intentional. It is a consistent thing, and you move from one level to the next level because it is intentional. You prepare opportunity, I believe that countries can be very intentional with success, but somehow on these designated, and like you said, in these air quotes, this supposed developing nations, I think we can only say China has moved out of the talk of developing nation, but China always had its own dynasty. China was always different. It had kings and built the Chinese wall and the Great Wall of China. It had edifices, so China had a lot of historic identity. Africa with its kings, a lot of it was wiped out of history books, right? And we were then chatteled across the world, and Black folks and Black nations now, like the Caribbean, where there are tons of Black-led nations, are struggling to be valid at all, to register, other than the UK always saying that we need to be blacklisted because we're a tax haven. That's the only time we matter, and they don't care if they kill our economies so that their taxpayers can come home. When you look at it, how is it so, based on your thinking, that, or what you've seen as an economist, that somehow the developing nations cannot seem to get out of its own way? Because New Zealand has a sovereign wealth fund, but when you talk about the sovereign wealth fund here, the first thing you hear from other Black people is, y'all Negroes always want something for nothing. But that's my natural resources that are getting exported, though. Why can't I get some? So when you look at the model, what is so special about us that we can't come out of the fray?
Well, that's a very loaded question. But let me go back. I like the idea what you're talking about, intent, right? And that goes back to what I'm saying. What is the intention for this country? The British Empire was intentional. The
Very.
American Empire was intentional. The Chinese Empire, intentional. The difference with us is size and capacity. Even when you look at our independence, for example, we had to negotiate.
That's right.
We're living in a context where, because we are individualistic as nations, we cannot come together. We are perpetuating the scarcity for us. So for example, a Bahamian is, you wouldn't be surprised if you hear a Bahamian who says, we're not part of the Caribbean, we're not Caribbean people. We don't want all them coming here.
That's right.
We don't want to be a part of them.
Right.
We want to be a part of someplace else that doesn't even want us. And the majority of people don't look like us, but and you see, we perpetuate it because what do we say? We better than them.
Yes.
And this is just Bahamians now. You go to other parts of the Caribbean, you have Jamaicans, Trinidad, Barbados, who would say they better than the rest, of the region. But at the same time, there's a geopolitical system that we have no control over. And that's because we haven't come together as the so-called developing world. After the late 19th century at the Berlin Conference, when the Europeans went to Berlin and decided, well, you get your nation, Germany, you get this, England, you get that.
That's right.
And it discombobulated the entire African continent. And we're still catching our breath from that. Even when the Bahamas was established, it was established for a particular purpose. It had nothing, it was about empire.
That's right. That's right.
It wasn't how are we going to make life better for the people who live here? Well, for some people, it's fine, it's dandy. But for us, we're just, like I said, essentially living on a treadmill, running and going almost nowhere.
So what you're suggesting then is a block. A Caribbean, let's just even talk about just Caribbean nations.
Yeah.
You mentioned our size, just the sheer capacity or the numbers of us. We are better together than we are apart, stronger together than apart. And
that's a part of one of the bases for my abundance is that we have to understand that we're all connected, that we're really not separated. Even when you look at the slave trade, some were dropped here, some were dropped there, some were dropped there. We're all the same people. And notwithstanding our so-called high per capita GDP, we just have a higher level of poverty. When you look at the income inequality in the Bahamas, it's
staggering.
It's just obscene.
It's wrong in so many levels. And the fact that we are comfortable to keep the status quo is disappointing to me. That we, I think,
like you said, this is what we know. This is, what you say, taken for granted assumptions that because like you said, we're not supposed to have. And even listen to the language and the conversations that we have. When persons of African descent make it rich, they automatically did it illegally. They're crooks, they're this, they're that.
Yep.
Other people can get rich and it's okay. You hire a Bahamian consultant, it's not the best, doesn't do the best work. We ain't hiring no more Bahamians. They don't know how to do the work. Yet we have people come here and they mess up. But
That's
we
right.
still bring them back. Some of them still here.
Years later.
And so it's not a straightforward solution. But first and foremost, we have to change how we think about ourselves and this country. Who are we? What kind of society is this? I mean, a basic thing like the tax structure, which is perhaps the most oppressive tool that
Yes.
could ever be devised
Yes.
for the average Bahamian to have less and less.
Mm. And refusing to change it, refusing to make it more
And
equitable.
but just like the abused wife or the abused spouse, you know, it's my fault or this is just the way it is. So I don't want a different kind of tax regime because this is the way it is. And that's how it should be. And I don't want them doing this. I know that, you know, the devil you know is better than the devil you don't know. You know,
So true.
a part of this, and even when you look at our education system, it perpetuates a certain kind of thinking and behavior. Follow the rules. Do not rebel. Do not do too much thinking. Just learn this and then write what you learn on the paper.
Don't question anything.
Don't ask too many questions.
Yeah. And again, it goes back to the different, you know, there are schools in this country that if you know, you look at it and be like, oh my God, this is how my child should learn.
Mm-hmm.
But I need $26,000 for 1 year. Okay, then obviously I have to go to the lesser models, but still cost me money. Or I can go to the government school system. And this is, again, increasing the income, the inequality gaps. Mm-hmm. And Doc, I believe that there must be sadly, I don't consider it revolutionary, but it needs to be revolutionary for us because we're so far. I think it's a 180 shift in mindset on how we govern and create an economic model that is comprehensive, that touches, because you hit on so many things. You hit on our natural resources. The appreciation of the mangrove comes with just a love for your country. How do you uproot it knowing that we are suffering from hurricanes every year? Mm-hmm. Every time someone comes and moves a mangrove for a hotel that they can leave when it gets blown away, is you saying, and which they do, right? Free Grand Bahama is like the place for dead things, right? Mm-hmm. Edifices that we still have to pay millions of dollars for, mm-hmm. but they've left them abandoned. Only in the Bahamas, right? I feel like this is just such a great. Dr. Olivia Saunders, you wanted to add something, Doc, before we go?
Yeah, I'm hopeful, and I try to be hopeful. I believe one of the things with this COVID-19 pandemic, more and more people are seeing the need to become more independent economically. So more and more persons are thinking about going into business, and I think that's a big, big, big positive. And I think the monies that the government is allocating to assist small businesses at this time is a very, very good thing. Important and helpful step that they're making. And it also forcing us to test our value system.
Yeah, yep, most definitely. You're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black, Dr. Olivia Saunders. Doc, it was a pleasure having you on today.
Yes.
And I will. Yeah. You know, and I promise that when I threaten you again, I won't threaten. I will threaten faster, stronger, so you don't have to wait almost a year or so later. Thank you so much. I appreciate the time.
Oh, I really enjoyed the conversation. So we'll see each other soon.
Excellent. Dr. Olivia Saunders, y'all, Tomato Economics, get the book. I'm telling you, it's a wonderful read. It is not technical. Well, it has some great concepts in there, but it's not a hard read. And when you're talking about economics, that's one of the worst things to do is have one of the silly books that you never understand. It's like trying to read a legal brief. Tomato Economics is a brilliant book, simple to read, concept that is so pure, and one that I support wholeheartedly. You're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black right here on Guardian 96.9 FM. We will be back right after this.
Oh, so
This is Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Fresh news, smart talk, all day.
You're listening to the Guardian News Network. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Taylor Ferguson. Here's what's making news. Thank you for tuning in. Two males arraigned in magistrate's court today in connection with the murder of a 17-year-old boy. 20-year-old Franklin Clinton and a 17-year-old juvenile appeared before Chief Magistrate Joyanne Ferguson Pratt to be formally charged with the murder of LeVard McKenzie. McKenzie was reported missing by family members on August 27. His body was later discovered in bushes near his Millers Heights home. Both accused were not required to enter a plea to the charge. Clinton was remanded to the Bahamas Department of Corrections. The 17-year-old was remanded to the Simpson Penn Center for Boys. They both returned to court on December 15th for the presentation of a voluntary bill of indictment. Following the arrest of several persons after police broke up a party over the weekend, Police Commissioner Paul Roll said it's selfish that people continue to gather in large numbers during this time. He's warning his officers will arrest anyone found in breach of the emergency powers orders.
And let's hope that there's a vaccine found that we can all, because it is very selfish for someone to want to go and have a party and expose hundreds of people possibly. If you don't know, I mean, unless they're taking some tests before they go into these parties, you got a whole crowd of people, and that is high risk. And I'm asking them to be responsible and show common sense, because essentially that's what you're not doing by having these parties.
Several parties have happened since restrictions have been relaxed. In a now viral social media video, officers are seen breaking up a party at a local bar on Saturday. Roll insists the force is not having any challenges policing the orders, despite several officers out of commission because of the virus. And that's what's making news. I'm Taylor Ferguson. AP News is coming up next.
Tired of banks forcing you to use technology to bank the way they want you to? Your convenience is important. So no matter what your banking needs, Commonwealth Bank's friendly staff are always available in branch for that personal one-on-one service. But when you choose technology, our online and mobile banking app offers you state-of-the-art functionality. The choice is yours. Commonwealth Bank. Bank the way you want.
Coronavirus update. I'm Tim McGuire with an AP News Minute. The number of people filing for unemployment over the past week dropped to 881,000, its lowest level since the spring. Los Angeles City Council declares a fiscal emergency because of the coronavirus, meaning furloughs for about 15,000 employees. The nation's trade deficit surged in July. AP's Sagar Meghani has the numbers.
The gap between what America buys and what it sells to foreigners hit $63.6 billion in July, a nearly 19% jump from June. It's the highest trade deficit in 12 years, driven by a record 10.9% jump in imports. Exports were also up by 8.1%.
NASCAR says no to any COVID relief for the final 16 teams taking part in the playoffs that start this Sunday. It's up to each driver to protect themselves from the virus, understanding there is no cushion for missing a race in the 10-race season finale. I'm Tim McGuire.
This is Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Fresh news, smart talk, all day.
And we're back. You're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. I hope everybody's doing well today. Taking care of yourself, of course. We've got a special guest on with us now, none other than Dr. Susan Williams-Lockhart. Doc, how are you?
Man, I'm doing well. How are you doing? How's my favorite talk show host doing? You've been elevated to that position.
Man, listen, I feel so honored now, right? Because you're my favorite doctor. Don't tell any other doctor, because I know a lot. And I just had Dr.
You done it now. You done it now, man. You done it now. Don't do that to me. Don't do that to me. I gotta live here, I gotta live here and walk some dark corridors at night, things go. No, man, it's all good. It's all good, man. Listen, it's good to see you.
It is a pleasure to see you. I'm happy that we're having this conversation today. But before we get started, I wanted to, make sure that folks know that Floral Fantasia, y'all, is now open for business, walk-ins and phone-in business, as well as pickup and deliveries. So get that single rose, get that bouquet of roses. Let your significant other, if it's a fellow, if it's your husband, your boyfriend, just show them some love. Gift baskets for all occasions and events. You can visit their website at fantasiaflorist.com, or you can also give them a call at 328-8655 or 376-7313. The 376-7313 number is WhatsApp, and you can call them directly at 328-8655. All right, Doc, we are talking, if you're just tuning in, you're listening to the Hit Bag with Nahaja Black. We've got Dr. Susan Williams-Lockhart, your favorite COVID-19 physician. Our last show, Doc, went viral. I don't know if you know.
Wow.
Organic.
People kept asking me, they say, so you're famous now, eh? I say, I don't know what you say. I was so busy working. I was like, well, I say it's just what I always tell people. And I mean, I'm glad for the forum to just educate some more people as well also. That's the thing. But I'm just grateful to be able to give people information, because I think that right now we are scared. Many people are fearful. Even among the healthcare providers themselves, there's a level of unease and discomfort and fear, I would think, and real concern over what is happening. So I say, listen, we can't run out into the sea. All of us can't go down Meguana. And from what I read in the newspaper, Meguana don't want us. They say don't come, right? Mr. Taylor, I had a patient who was trying to catch a boat to Meguana. I said, what time you going? She said, that man, let's pull up and leave anytime he's ready. And I was like, I like that guy. So we have to be here. And my whole thing about it is, once you have to be in a situation, you have to find ways to cope. You have to find scenarios that you are going to use that are going to empower you rather than make you feel afraid and make you feel scared. And there is always something that you can do. Maybe I might be Pollyanna, maybe I might be overly optimistic, but that is my feeling about it, in spite of the face of what we are in position with facing at this point,
Yeah, I love that. And, I think that's one of the things that folks are looking for. We're looking for understanding so that we can, with the more knowledge that I receive and the more that I understand, it helps me to reduce my anxiety. It helps me to be able to gauge and make better choices and decisions based on information and understanding. And I think what many Bahamians, and why your video went viral when we had that interview, Doc, was that you help people to understand the virus, help us to know what it is, how it affects us, why we need to wash our hands and sanitize and stay 6 feet away. That understanding created more of an instant commitment to fighting it as well. And that is the power of knowledge and understanding, and all you're getting, get it, right? So, and I believe that's why, and it went viral organically. We didn't do anything to this video, your video. When you were talking RNA and DNA and look here, folks are like, whoa, this is the best explanation we've ever had. So that's why I think it's so important that we continue this conversation with a doctor who, this is your business, Doc. You're on the front line. You're dealing with this business every day, and you explain it like no one else. So who else would I call to talk about an issue that is big with us? Based on the last presser for the COVID-19 task force or team, one of the things shared was that all of the hospitalizations for COVID-19 patients all had comorbidities, right? And I posted that was a shocker, but at the same time, it made sense. I posted this on my page and someone said, explain to me what is a comorbidity. And that's when I knew instantly that we have to have this discussion. So before we get even into how COVID affects persons with comorbidities, Dr. Susan Williams-Lockhart, Doc, tell us, what is a comorbidity?
So what you have, there are some terms, and those are epidemiological terms. I'm not an epidemiologist, but we use them in terms of normal practice. So morbidity refers to something that makes you unwell, something that is going to make you ill. So a comorbid factor is not directly what may be affecting you, but it is something that certainly you have another disease process. And that comorbid factor may definitely affect the way in which your body responds to that particular illness. So it's not the illness itself, but it is another factor, another illness, another issue with the body that you have that is going to impact your healing, impact your journey to wellness from whatever your particular complaint may be.
Ooh,
you understand? So, for instance, some people have cancer. Cancer may be the primary disease, but if you have diabetes or you have hypertension or you have a kidney issue, you have a comorbid factor. Some people may have infection with HIV or they may have AIDS, okay? But they may also have, again, diabetes. They may also have, again, hypertension. They may even have cancer. Not caused, so comorbid disease in the truest essence is another disease process not caused by the one that is giving you a problem. Okay, so it's something independent that you have. So a comorbid factor, somebody who has hypertension may also have diabetes. Now they're not caused the same way. All right, somebody who has diabetes may also have obesity. But that diabetes and obesity are sort of like going together in a way. Yes, but someone who may have a urinary tract infection may also be obese. So there are two things. So the obesity and the urinary tract infection are two separate pathways, two separate sort of illnesses, but they definitely can have an impact and an effect one upon the other as well.
That's a great explanation, actually. And I learned a lot in that explanation just now as well. So it is really that things that might be affecting you at the same time, right? And then so you would say they're comorbid factors. We know that co is the prefix means with, morbid means what?
Morbid means disease causing. So there's an epidemiological preference. You have mortality. Mortality means causing death. Morbidity means pertaining to something that causes disease or illness. Now, if you don't check it, or that is not corrected, that can go on to cause a point of mortality. But morbidity just refers to anything that causes you to be unwell, all right? Or anything that causes a disease state is a condition of morbidity, so to speak.
Excellent. Okay. So you can tell, at least my language skills got me asking these questions. You see, I put that co there with that morbid. Now I'm a little smarter.
You got it, girl. You got it. You on the board.
Okay. So if you're just tuning in, Dr. Socialism and Williams-Lockhart, and we're talking about COVID and its effects, or how your comorbidities and COVID come together and can cause a real challenge. All right, Doc. So let's dive in. Now that I have a better understanding of what a comorbidity is, right? Well, then, Houston, we got a problem in the Bahamas, eh?
You said it, because we have a whole aspect. We have a whole aspect of, there's a whole, what do you call, department in the Ministry of Health called chronic non-communicable diseases. They're chronic, meaning to say they last for a long period of time, okay? They're chronic. They're non-communicable, meaning to say you don't get them the same way that you get COVID or mumps or the flu, right? So they're non-communicable. And they're diseases. These diseases indicate high blood pressure or hypertension, high blood sugar or diabetes, obesity, right, or being too fat, and also high cholesterol, okay? And then you can have a combination of all of these factors in a process that affects your hormones, it affects your general way of being and living, called metabolic syndrome. So I'd like to talk about that too. But we have had issues that it's so bad that they actually created a whole department. They had a whole, not just a committee or a couple of people to say, you sit down and look at those figures and work on that. No, they created an entire department to deal with this particular issue because it was of such importance, such impact to us here in the Bahamas at this time. Now, if you look at the trend of it, I remember once having a talk with Dr. John Lund. Okay, he's an oncologist, I think oncologist, hematologist, internal physician. And I remember Dr. Lund telling me that he, as a young doctor, was doing a study where he was looking at what the hearts of Bahamians. And I think he said that up until, I want to say, 1972 or thereabout, somewhere in the 70s. He says, when you cut open the hearts and the blood vessels of the humans, he was doing a study, and I think he published this. He said, you found the hearts and the blood clean as a whistle, no issue with them. After 1972, when you started, and I think that was the advent of when we first started having fast food, we first started having that sort of upward mobility because we were independent, we had got majority rule, we had more disposable income, we were driving more cars, not walking as much. When we first started that, he said you started seeing a change. You started seeing clogged arteries. You started seeing fat around the vessels of the heart, all right? I have a little heart here, okay? And the heart is your pump. The heart is how you get blood to get to your brain, very important, okay? The blood in the heart is a pump, it's a circuit. So blood comes back from the body, and the blood is devoid of oxygen and nutrients. And it's coming here to you, and it's full of something called carbon dioxide. That's your waste product, waste gas, what you're breathing out. So it goes here to the right side of the heart, and then it's a pump, it's a circuit. And the blood is going to flow from the right side of the heart and go through this big blue blood vessel here to get into the lungs on either side, right? So when the blood goes to, I have my body here, right? So from the heart, the blood is going to go to the lungs where it's going to pick oxygen up, right? And then the oxygen now, that oxygenated blood is now going to be returned back to this here, the left side of the heart. And then it's going to go through this big blood vessel, the red one called the aorta. And that is going to now be pumped throughout the entire body. So the heart has a very definitive and very vital function, the heart and the blood vessels, right? Yes. So when you have diseases that affect and impact that, you know that you're going to have yourself a whole heap of hurt and a whole load of trouble. And this is where we have found ourselves as well. You understand that?
Yes.
Right? And all the factors sort of correlate with each other. We're going to come back to COVID with that. But let's look, for instance, at hypertension. Why do we have high blood pressure? Well, first of all, we are from an African descent. The majority of people in the Bahamas are African descended, whether we look like it or not, but we have some African genes in us. And it's found that people of that nationality or that ethnicity at any rate, they have a higher level of hypertension, right? It is thought that the cells or the hormones in the bloodstream that retain salt and water work in such a way that we have an elevated blood pressure. We call it essential hypertension, okay? It's not necessarily caused by anything else. And so this is genetic. So in my family, for instance, I'm from Trinidad, and as many people here, they're hypertensive. Now, do you just wake up and get hypertension? No, I think it's a genetic aspect, but you also encourage it. So for myself, I didn't start struggling until after having 3 kids and putting on a series of weight and then eating that beautiful, good food that we love to talk about, right? Don't give us no fresh food. Season up that thing. But when you season up that food with the pepper and the salt and all the sour and everything else that you put in it, you're increasing your level of salt, right? What happens when you go to the sports bar and they give you salt they give you salted chips and salted snacks to eat? What do they give? What happens after that? How do you
get hungry, thirsty, sorry.
You get thirsty, exactly. So wherever you have extra salt in the body wants to dilute it. That's just natural. It is going to contain and retain water. So that's one of the mechanisms of doing it, right? You're going to maintain and retain water. Once you retain water, remember now, the pipes in the bloodstream are a closed system, right? The blood vessels in the bloodstream, they're closed systems. So when you put more fluid in the blood vessels, what happens? The pressure goes up.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So by eating a highly salted diet, we are going to increase our blood pressure as well, okay? Another factor that we have, we love fat, right? When I say that, we love oil, we love lard, we love grease. Don't make any sort of pineapple tart. You want that white lard in the red tin, okay? Want that, but that is some of the worst things that we can have, that lard, right? That lard is some of the most worst things that we can have. And what happens when we have, because that's mostly saturated fats, and that has to do with our cholesterol levels as well. Because the things that have that bad cholesterol and that high level, that high amount of those saturated fats and the things that taste so good, it's like pizza dough, like ice cream, cupcakes, right? All of that pineapple tart, oh my goodness, that sponge cake that melts in your mouth when you eat it. I see you feel the same. I see that, right? That tastes good going in, but it is not good for you, because what happens if this paper tube here is my blood vessels? The blood vessels are tubes, right? this is my normal blood vessel that I have. Normal person, blood vessel, great. The blood is flowing through and out normally, right? When I eat fat and other things, the fat comes out of the bloodstream after a point in time when it gets high and it deposits on the blood vessel. What happens to the blood vessel?
It closes up.
It's closed up. So therefore, what's happening to the pressure of the blood trying to get past this blood vessel? The pressure is going to do what? It is going to increase.
Yeah.
So that's another point, another fact. If we have those blockages, not only does the pressure increase, but eventually what ends up happening, the more we eat some potato salad, we eat some macaroni and cheese. Why don't we stop it? Let's put some guava duff in there with that nice rum sauce.
Oh, I saw the guava duff. Why you had to bring up the guava duff, man?
So when we finish now, what we dealing with? How that vessel looks now? Not good,
Call
right?
me the Walking Dead.
That's it. Walking dead, you dead. Ain't walking, you dead. The feeling is coming to get you, right? That is what is happening called feeling. Don't laugh. That's exactly what is happening. So now, when that happens to the blood vessels that sit in important places like the heart, or the blood vessels that are supplying important places like the brain, when that happens, what do you think is going to happen? Okay? As they say in Soil Boy, you're falling out. You're going to fall out because your heart now can't pump. It's not pumping because the heart is a muscle. It also has to have a blood supply. So when you have those blood vessels that supply the heart being blocked up by all the things that we like to eat over a period of time, right? Two things are going to happen. You have that. Those things don't go alone. Fat and salt, pressure is elevated, also blockages in the vessels. When those vessels are blocked, the heart is not getting any sort of blood supply. So what's going to happen? If you don't pay the heart, what is going to do? You're going to go on strike, right? Yeah, like a union worker, right?
That's right.
The heart is going to go on strike. The heart is paid by getting oxygen and food. If you block up these blood vessels, these tiny blood vessels that supply the muscle of the heart, and you don't get any oxygen and food, the heart going on strike and you, not good. You're going to have a heart attack, right? And hopefully when you have it, you can survive it. But that is what happens. When it happens to your brain, okay, what is going to end up happening is that you're going to have a brain attack or a stroke, okay? What happens with a stroke? So a heart attack, you're going to get that tightness in the chest, that sweating. We may have we may fall out, we may faint, right? Okay, Sanford and Son, Red Fox, the big one.
Yeah, because the hole is hard.
Right, hole is hard. That is what he was imitating. People who have strokes, they may feel dizzy, the mouth may slur down, their arm or foot may become weak, right? They may have difficulty talking, right? So all these things are going to happen as a result. So that's just from how we eat. So that's why I'm saying that we have to be aware of it. Many of us has a high level of salt and high diets, high in fat and high in salt, And when we eat the food from the places with the golden arches and the red and white, I don't want people thinking that I'm trying to encourage one fast food place against the next.
You can't do that. I don't want
them to see me like Oprah and have no sort of money like Oprah to hire all them big lawyers, right? But when people eat, those foods taste so good because they are high. There's something that when we eat those foods, it gives us pleasure. And we become addicted to that taste. And when you do that, you continue eating it. But those foods are high in saturated fats. They are high in salts. They're high in many of the chemicals and things that are not good for us. And that in turn causes our bodies to have these conditions. Do you understand? So this is one of the reasons that we have.
Right. Listen, do I understand, Doc? I feel like I just went to a masterclass in understanding a lot, quite a bit about hypertension. The thing that came to mind that was such a great visualization for me was, listen, when you, like you said, if you eat all of that salt, you get thirsty, right? Your body gets thirsty. It collects all of this fluid. It puts pressure on your veins. I have, in my family, we have hypertension. I've been very fortunate. And because of that, I try my best to eat well, even though I am overweight. I'm working on it even now, because that is a concern of mine, right? When you look at it, it seems so prevalent that I wonder, and we'll talk about the COVID part of it and how it affects it. But when you look at it, I wonder, how do you reverse course when it is such a national issue? We are one of the most obese nations in the world. Right?
Why? You see, what happened is that we started fun, as I told people before, my family's from America, I've lived in America. America is one of the best nations in the world, but you have to know what to pick up and what to leave down, right? 42% of Americans are obese, right? That's 4 in 10. Some people say 5 in 10 of them. I'm not sure our figures here, but we are pretty close to that. And if you just do a poll by going to the food store and just look at the people in the line, just count them, at least half of them, including me, you know, we overweight in terms of what we know. How did we get there? How did we get to that point? Sit down and think back to what our history was. We were basically a people, agricultural-based society. We walked everywhere, didn't we?
Yes.
We walked and we would plant our food, our gardens. We'd walk. We had to wash. The other day I was making bread with my husband. I have a new respect for my mother-in-law. Breaking bread and kneading that sucker is hard work. You're doing that by hand, man. You there pushing it down. Now it's great stress relief because you can punch some people. I hit this one. You know, it's great stress relief. But it is hard work. We don't like working hard like that. Not when you got your nails and your lashes and everything. You can't go sweating up, knead up no sort of bread and stuff like that. You're doing that, right? But the baking the bread and doing the other hard sort of artisanal work was what we needed to have in order for us to be having good exercise components, right? Because what has happened to us, we eat a diet normally that is high in, let's say, complex carbohydrates. What do I mean by that? So things like the plants in the air, the sweet potato, right? We eat those things, all right? But then when you eat those things, what were you going to go do? You were going to walk 2 miles to go to the field to work hard for the whole day. Or you're going to go sculling in the boat to go catch that fish, right? Okay? You're going to burn that food off, right? Now what work we're doing? So we have retained the diet, right? We've maintained that diet, but we have not maintained the physical exercise. We have not maintained that physical component. So as a result of that, what is happening to us is that we're not burning off that food or that fat, right? Again, our diet has changed. Normally, things like, I mean, might kill a hog or pig or a cow, you know, for a festive occasion. And that's when you would have meat. Other than that, our diet was primarily plant-based. That's what it was. Our diet was a primarily plant-based diet. Isn't that what it was?
Yes.
We had a primarily plant-based diet. Now we have money. So we're eating steak and the rare cuts and the pork and the chicken and, you know, we're having all these things there. And then we can get access to all the processed foods and the cured foods. Pig food with nitrites on them are not the best food to have, you know. You shouldn't eat that too much. You should eat that once in a while, especially with kids. We get issues with cancers and different things like that, right? So we stopped working, but we still kept eating. That's the problem. That's the balance right there, right? Right there. We stopped working, we kept eating. And so we are digging a grave for ourselves with our teeth. This is what I honestly do believe.
Listen, I'm so glad that I have you here, Dr. Susan Williams-Lockhart, here with us. My Facebook, YouTube watchers are saying she's really good. They just love you, Doc. When we come back, let's talk about how these comorbidities, our hypertension, our diabetes, how COVID is affecting persons with these issues, Doc, because I think we would be, that would cause a lot of pause on how we are, you know, going about our daily business. You're listening to The Hit Back with Nahaja Black. Special guest with me, none other than the one and only Dr. Susan Williams-Lockhart. We'll be back right after this.
Okay.
Tired of banks forcing you to use technology to bank the way they want you to? Your convenience is important. So no matter what your banking needs, Commonwealth Bank's friendly staff are always available in branch for that personal one-on-one service. But when you choose technology, our online and mobile banking app offers you state-of-the-art functionality. The choice is yours. Commonwealth Bank. Bank the way you want.
With the outbreak of COVID-19, we find ourselves having to be more self-sufficient, socially aware, and technically savvy. At JS Johnson, we remain committed to our customers during this global pandemic. Our Nassau and Freeport branches are open to assist you remotely, Monday to Friday, between 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Call 397-2100 or email info@jsjohnson.com. Be safe, Bahamas. JS Johnson Insurance Agents and Brokers, giving you peace of mind.
This is Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Fresh news, smart talk, all day.
And we're back. You're listening to The Hit Back with Nahaja Black, Dr. Susan Williams-Lockhart here. Listen, don't forget, Fantasia Florist is open They are ready to receive you. They are ready for you to get back into doing your wonderful business. If you need floral arrangements for your wedding, you know, because listen, y'all, people still trying to get married in this season. If you need it for, you know, none of these get-togethers. I was about to say get-together, Doc, and then I realized it's COVID-19 era. What am I talking about? But if you want to get together with your ma who you ain't seen in a little while, just send her some flowers. You know, your mothers always love that. Your friend, you know, your sweet, not your sweetheart. See, yeah, let me move on. Fantasia Florists, everyone, Fantasia Florists. Don't forget, visit them at their website and give them a call. They are open. They are ready to serve you. Give them a call at 328-8655 or 376-7313. All right, Doc, let's talk about it now. Comorbidities, diabetes, hypertension. Comorbidity can be if you're, yeah. Charles, I got a comorbidity. As soon as you say obesity, check. I think I need a drink now. And drinking, it probably ain't wise. No.
No, water is a good thing. Water, coconut water especially, good for you.
Coconut water is good for me.
Yeah, for high blood pressure, sometimes like people who, you know, it's slight, or they ask me, well, what should I take? And I say coconut water. It's great because coconut water is like almost like an automatic, like a natural form of an intravenous fluid, because you have potassium in it. And the body's salt is what makes our food salty, sodium. But when you put potassium in the body at a certain level, the body swaps the salt, it kicks out the sodium and keeps the potassium. So when the sodium goes, it takes the water with it. So that's how people tell you. Some people for high blood pressure, they just eat a banana a day or 2 bananas a day, right? That's what they do, because bananas are high in potassium as well. You see?
That's great. I didn't know that.
Yeah, but the fresh coconut water from the farm.
Yeah, I was about to say, not the canned stuff. Go and get it from the coconut boy who ain't in jail. Look at God, won't he do it? Yeah. That bonded coconut boy. Hallelujah. Yes. Yeah. All right, Doc. So let's talk about someone with diabetes. All right. How does COVID affect someone with diabetes? So I'm diabetic. I have to take insulin. How would it affect me? I'm curious.
Okay. So first of all, the pathology of diabetes, there are 2 types of diabetes that you have. There's a type called type 1, which typically tends to occur in younger people, and that's a genetic one. In that one, there's an organ in the body called the pancreas. Let me see if I can get my pancreas here. Right, there's an organ in the body called the pancreas, right? It sits right behind the stomach. I'll take the liver out. Oh Lord, the pancreas want to fall out now. Anyhow, right. That's the pancreas. It's all the way at the back. It's all the way at the back of the stomach, behind the stomach, right? It's an organ, a little white organ there, right? It's a small one, but it's a little white organ called the pancreas. That pancreas actually produces insulin. Now, some people genetically, their pancreas doesn't work. They don't have any insulin as a result of that. Insulin, remember we talked about how the coronavirus forms a lock on the key for the cell? That's what it does. Yes. So in the same way, insulin has to attach itself to the cell, and it opens up the cell so sugar or glucose can go inside of it. When you do not have enough insulin in your body in type 1, then the cell, you can have all the sugar in the world. It's like you dying of thirst in an oasis. There's no way, because you don't have a glass. There's no way for the sugar to get into the cell. So the sugar stays in the bloodstream and gives you all the problems that you have. That's type 1 diabetes. Type 2 diabetes now is a different one. So here you have insulin. You may not have as much as you normally would have, but the problem now is that your body is just tired of sugar. It's like the insulin receptor is open up the cell to the insulin, to the sugar. So this is our cell again, right? The insulin receptor is opening up the cell to the sugar, right? But the cell is saying, man, I can't check for that. You have sugar here, sugar there, sugar everywhere. I'm not checking. I forget that. Shut that mother down, right? And it shut it down. And then the insulin receptor basically goes away, right? So when you find that happens now, it means that the sugar does not get into the cell. So these are why people who have diabetes, they're going to be tired because their cells need the sugar for energy. They're going to have sugar coming out in the urine because the body is saying, well, the sugar in the cell, what am I going to do with all the sugar? Kidney, take it out, pee it out. The sugar deposits in the eyes as cataracts. The other point is the sugar also deposits along the lines of the blood vessels because it's trying to get it, and it also makes the blood vessels hard. And that too as well can cause you to have high blood pressure. So people who have high blood pressure and diabetes is like 2 loaded guns pointed at their body system. And many times these are two horsemen that ride together in our system, right? So what happens, and typically that type 2 diabetic person, that normally comes along as you get older and you get more obese and you find that you've eaten maybe the wrong type of diet. So once that obesity trigger sort of gets there, fat itself creates things which are going to stop insulin from working properly. So fat is an anti-insulin. So the more fat you have in your body, especially around your waistline, the more fat you have in your body, the more it's fighting against the insulin. And so the more likely you are to become a diabetic person, especially fat that's around the midsection. When the fat is around the midline of the body, the abdominal area, that fat is the most dangerous fat overall. You see what I'm saying to you? So that's dangerous. Yes, that's how fat. So some people have what you call metabolic syndrome, and this is like a blizzard. This is like Attila the Hun, Hitler. What else again? I don't know. Attacking the body. It's a combination of high blood pressure, diabetes, and high cholesterol. And these people typically have a high waist circumference. You know, there's a lot of fat in the front of the abdomen, right? So that's why one of the tools that you can use to measure how you're going in your health path is to measure your waist circumference, right? It should be not more than 35 for a woman, not more than 40 for a man. Now, listen, I know we ain't seen 35 for quite some time now, right? Okay? But doesn't mean we don't try. We keep on going. Where I always say to people, you did not get where you are in one day. Didn't happen in one day. It's not going to reverse itself in one day. There's no pill, there's no potion. You can try to cut all the fat out, you can try to suck it out. You can go do there are many different things people do, bypass surgery and so, but even whatever you do, it's a process that is going to take time for you to get back to health, okay? So we have to be encouraged with that now. So one of the other factors that happens when you are diabetic, along with when you are hypertensive, obese, or with high cholesterol, but particularly with diabetes, the white blood cells, which are like our policemen in the body, which spring into action anytime we have any sort of infection, anytime we have any sort of injury to the body. White blood cells start working like lazy, we call them lazy policemen. They get lazy. So instead of moving like this, when the body sends out signals, saying, help, come here, I'm having a problem. So like, for instance, we talked about it, when the COVID hits onto the body and gets into the cell, the body system releases what we call cytokines, right? Those things. Well, the white blood cells in diabetics are like, well, we are checking for you today. In a police car, we might get there maybe tomorrow. We'll see, right? And so diabetics as a whole have a decreased level of immunity. So it's known that if a diabetic gets any type of infection, be it a urinary tract infection, be it a pneumonia, be it a skin infection, they are going to fare a lot worse or take a lot longer to heal than a normal person. So for them, any type of infection is dangerous. COVID in itself is even doubly so. The reason being that now the immune system, which is what has to fight this COVID virus, now it's not functioning. So it's basically like open season. So it's like open season, come in and take what you want. And this is what happens with many people who are, in fact, diabetic. So we essentially, a person who had diabetes, who was coping, trying to eat right, take their medication, do whatever, and they were doing sort of okay, not brilliant, but they were doing sort of all right, right? When COVID came, it laid it bare because already the body's defenses are low. And when you have a diabetic state, you are already in a state of what we call inflammation. You already have some level of inflammation. And what COVID does, COVID just comes open. That's like the primer. It's like, the thief, the fella, he passed, he saying, I think I'm going to break in that house. Let me just leave that little window open,
Yeah.
A little window open. That's like a primer. So a window is open, so now the COVID can come in through the door and take over everything. So this is why people who have diabetes and diabetics are in such grave danger overall, because their immune systems do not function well. And this is what happens with people with COVID and the immune system, right? People with hypertension, slightly different situation. One of the things we talked about, so let's go back and tie it all together. COVID, we know, as we said, it's going to get into the cell, it's going to take over the cell, cause the virus particles to be produced. It's also going to produce what you call a cytokine storm. That's inflammatory products. It's going to just release certain substances. They're finding out, the research was showing one substance in particular called Bradykinin. There are many other ones, but Bradykinin in particular, what it's going to do is going to damage the blood vessels, going to punch holes in them, right? So everywhere you have blood vessels, this is why people with COVID were more prone towards getting strokes, the kidneys were impacted, the testicles were impacted everywhere. So it punches holes in the blood vessels. It also punches holes in all of the, it also punches holes in all of the membranes that normally separate the body. The body is very organized. You can see there's a compartment between the lung and the heart, a compartment between the lung and the liver, and all the parts of the body, very well organized. When you get COVID, it punches holes in those compartments, and then it's like open season to everything, right? So
Really?
that is one of these. Yeah, that's what happens. You get those free radicals, those cytokines coming in, and the body's system, the body's immune system is trying to chase behind it to overcome it. And by the time it gets in there, especially if you're already starting from a behind position, it's like it's like, for instance, that everybody's at the 200-yard dash line and you are the 400 line. So they started running the race, and your immune system is now trying to catch up from the corner, from far behind. This is why so many people, especially those with the comorbidities, they're going to bite the dust, and they're going to hit it and be very, very, very ill, and they may not pull through that situation. So the first primary thing is you want to prevent it, right? When I look at the people who passed away, unfortunately, when you look at them, some of them were very obese, some of the frontline people.
Yes.
And I'm like, maybe because when people, I'm 56, and my obesity is defined as, we talk about something called the body mass index, or the BMI. You take your weight in kilograms and you put it over your height in meters, you multiply it by itself, right? You can find it, their body mass BMI calculators everywhere. It's not a perfect system, right? But it gives you an idea. A normal body BMI is between 19 and about 25, 26, right? Say even 27. If you more than 28, 29, you're overweight. More than 30, you are considered to be obese. More than 32, 34, you are morbidly obese, all right? Yeah. And as you go up along the line, your risk factors for all those things, diabetes, hypertension, high cholesterol, strokes, heart attacks, kidney disease, all these things, all of those factors also increase along the line with it, right? You see? Yeah. So this is what so how do we do it? We can't change our height. We can't all of a sudden grow tall. Like if I was
exactly.
6 feet, I put on 6 inches. Right? I know 6 inches coming, child. Right? I 5'6", that's where I can go.
That's right.
But ain't getting no more. I can tell you that one, right? So since we are not going to get taller, we gotta lose the weight. Yeah. I was always that convicted me, because I started since I told my husband, I said, because when I'm looking at the people who are biting the dust, many of them, the only thing that they have is that they are obese. That's the comorbidity. Some of them, that's the only situation. I'm like, I can't let no. I have to be better. Yes.
I thought I was good. I was like, I can fight this, and I'm okay. Okay. See, that's why, Doc. And you say that drinking is not good.
Alcohol?
Yeah. Because you just told me some stuff that a lot of people might decide they need a shot.
Oh, Lord.
And it ain't a medicinal type. It's the spirit one, but it's come with wine.
The wine. That's the wrong spirit that they got. Wrong friend. No, listen to me. Alcohol, what I always say to people is, I make a decision. I choose not to drink. I've not done that for a long time, but that's because of what I do. I don't know what time it is. I might have to go and talk with someone, deal with somebody. I don't want to go in there happy. And other people looking at me, you say, going and cut what? Cut the we can't do that. You got to be alert. So I make a decision not to do that for other personal reasons. But, there is a thing, you can drink within moderation, what they call it at the end of the time. And they say normally 2 units, right? 2 to 5 units, right? A day. If you are a guy, men can drink more because they have their bigger bodies, bigger livers as well also too. But you don't want to overdo that. And for some people, like for instance, in the Mediterranean, they found that red wine actually does have a preservative effect in terms of antioxidant function and in terms of also the heart function. Now, don't sit down and start swinging back the Chardonnay and say, no, we got it now. This is my prescription. Don't like when they and say, this is my prescription medication right here. Doc done say I could take that. In moderation again, you see? And you have to do some other good things with that at the end of the time, right? When you drink too much alcohol poisons your liver and causes some other things that you will not want to have happen to you. So you got. So I'm going to tell people you want to have a drink, I'm not going to say to you, listen, that's your choice, you do that. But again, like with everything else, in moderation, you see? You got to do that in moderation.
If you're just tuning in, Dr. Susan Williams-Lockhart, the new physician of the Hit Back with Nahaja Black, right? I stole her from Clint, but I'm sure Clint will try to reclaim. But nonetheless, we digress. Doc, for persons who have the comorbidity of lupus, sickle cell, that I'm finding that sickle cell issues are pretty prevalent here in the Bahamas. I'm surprised with how many Bahamians have lupus and persons who are undergoing cancer treatment. They also are finding on the list of the persons who have been admitted that they're a part of that group of persons who've been affected by COVID-19. What advice would you give to persons, you know, if they find that they might not be able to avoid going out? Let's say you are an essential worker. You can't avoid going out and working and being amongst people. What sort of advice would you give them?
So I tell people, I say it's the same thing. It's like on a one note. You know, it's like how they say the Saxons have a beat that they come out with. It's the same beat. We have to. So people who have issues with their immune system, and you mentioned some of them, people with lupus, people with sickle cell disease, right? People with some of those other concerns. You therefore have to do as much as you can to make sure your condition stays under control. So what does that mean? In most cases, you're under the care of a physician. That's your competent authority. You should really be a partner in partnership, that they are helping and instructing you as to how it is you are going to deal with and make sure that your disease does not fall off the chart. Now it's a tough time. I had one gentleman, I put him in the hospital because he didn't get his medication for 2 weeks. I went home to see him and they said, so you have to make sure, you know, you have a supply. Talk with someone, get a supply of your medication. Many physicians and even those who are in the public clinic, you know, more kudos to them. They're taking calls by, you know, phone and by on social media so that you can make sure that that happens. That's the first thing you have to do. You have to keep yourself as well as you can. Make sure you eat a good diet. Make sure you get as much exercise and as much rest as you can do. So you're trying as much as you can to build and boost your immune system. The next thing you have to do, you got to stop the level of exposure of yourself to the virus. You got to stop the level of exposure. And we go back to the same old note. What we're talking about, put the mask on. I know people have all sorts of stories and theories about why they put in the mask on, and it's a conspiracy story. My thing is, listen, I too tired to really go into all of that with people, right? My attitude is, I won't wear the mask. You don't want to wear it. I will see you later, alligator, and we can talk on social media, but you will stay 10 feet from me. I'm not going up by where you are, because this mask, what it does, is not best and it's not foolproof. Some people who have some issues may not necessarily be able to wear that as such, right? But it has filters and it's going to help. If you have COVID, COVID travels on the stream of our respiratory airwaves. COVID doesn't move itself. So if I have COVID, when it goes, well, some of it is not going to go through. If you have COVID, when it comes, but it's not going to get through to me. So that's the first thing. Put a mask on, right? And try to avoid crowds as much as you can. You know, don't go out. Sometimes when I pass by the grocery, my husband say, "You guys say, not me. I ain't going to shop for no cornflakes and COVID." No, darling. We come back the next day or some other time, or we eat what we have in the house, right? I'm not going. If it's a crowded place, I'm not going to go in that place. That's the first point. So you stay away from the crowd. You put your mask on. Try as much as you can to social distance 3 to 6 feet. And don't go places you don't have to go, right? For those of us who are in the medical profession as well, also to put on a face shield, right? With the mask. Mm-hmm. Face shields or goggles protect the eyes. The mucous membrane is the wet membrane. So the COVID does not get in there. That's where the bacteria, the virus likes. It likes those moist areas. And the cells that it infects are found to a large proportion in the back of the nose and the back of the throat as well, right?
Right. Right.
Next thing, hand sanitizer. I have a small bottle that I refill. I sometimes with the teeth, and other people hand sanitizer when mine's gone. I put it on, then I look to the left, look to the right, and I pump it, and I say, okay, I go to go, right? I refill. Your teeth little gas in the gas station, right? Hand sanitizer. You know, get into the habit every time you pass a sanitizing station or somebody have alcohol, even if you just did it, do it again. You pass a sink, especially if you are working in a medical environment. You pass a sink, wash your hands, wash your hands. Many of us, our stethoscopes that we have, other pieces of equipment, sanitize it with some alcohol, right? That's another thing. The virus is a respiratory virus, especially if you are working in an enclosed environment, especially if you're working in that enclosed environment. What you want to do is you want to come outside. I tell people, you know, try maybe 15 minutes. You normally have a break when you're working, yeah? Take your break outside, get outside, walk out and open up, take your mask off, right? You know, breathe some fresh air as much as you can do. If you have some sunshine, even better, walk in the sunshine. Sunshine gives you vitamin D, 20 minutes of that, which boosts your immunity. And also the ultraviolet radiation in the sunshine, right, is going to kill the virus. That's what kill any bacteria or any germs. That's why I remember in the old days, what you used to do, you used to wash the thing with the soap. I remember you used to put the clothes to hang out outside, right?
Yeah.
To bleach, but also to that fresh air and the sunshine would kill the germs. Unfortunately, now we have wards that are closed up and air conditioned, right? So you want to come out of enclosed spaces if you can, as much as you can, come out of enclosed spaces. So those are the things that you're going to do if you have to work, you know? And it's really tough for the people in those hospitals right now. There are hospital staff, some of them tired, you know, stressed out, different things like that. You got to take time for yourself. I was telling one, the beach is free. Mr. Minister, Dr. Minister, open back up the beach, man. Go on the beach and walk up and down, man. That's one of the best medications. I was in Goodman's Bay.
I know, that's right.
That was one of the best things. You're in the salt water. It's beautiful. It is good. Do things that bring you joy and bring you happiness as well, too. It's not always about medicine in a bottle. You know, I think happiness and rest, relaxation, having good relationships with your family members so you have that support. Those are all things that you can do. So even if you have those situations, you can in fact still conquer and not be conquered by COVID.
Before we go, I have a question I want to ask you, Doc. Reports are that the new vaccine, this vaccine will be out November, before the US election. I'm remembering what you said about the vaccine and how it needs to undergo certain trials since it is an RNA virus. COVID is an RNA virus. What are your thoughts on this, this new vaccine?
I am still, I would tell you, I'm reading, and you know, as I said, I don't ever want to talk against what people say officially, but I always tell people that there are two ways in which we get information. Information passes down to us. There is the official camp of people, and those official people are guided by the FDA, the CDC, WHO. These are the people who have to give you policy, and policy normally is set once they have done best practices, they have done trials, they've done other things. Then you have anecdotal situations where you are hearing information, you can read, you say, this worked with this group, you know, it's not gone through trials as yet, it's not gone through random controlled trials or double-blinded studies, but it seemed to have benefit in this group, this is what we did, it may work for you. And I always tell people, go sit down and have a chat with your healthcare provider and see what you wish and what you don't wish to do. Fact of the matter is the RNA virus, COVID is an RNA virus. The other RNA virus that we know very much about is HIV.
Yes.
Think about it. Still to this day, do not have an HIV virus vaccine as yet, right?
Yes.
They're very difficult to get vaccines made too, those RNA viruses. So this is sort of like the first of, in many fronts. It's the first one, the first time doing it on a mass spectrum and on a mass scale. And as I said, I'm following through to see what they're doing, how they are making their approvals, what they're going to do. And I guess they are putting it onto human trials without necessarily having run all the animal trials. And they're doing that because of expediency. And there are some models where you do that because of the scenario. Now, would I take such a vaccine? I would have some pause. I would want to look at that and sit down and say, okay, let me see what happened to the people who took it. One person I said, thought I had a good thing. He said, I don't want to be the very first one. I don't want to be the very last one doing it, you know? Let me see what that does in some people, first of all. Let me see what they're saying. And then perhaps we can see where it is going to go. And, you know, for us in the Bahamas, I mean, I'm not sure, I don't sit at those tables, but normally trials are recorded and they are planned out in terms of, and normally when you get the vaccine, like when we had the H1N1 and the flu vaccine, we gave it to the most vulnerable people first. And, you know, it went on by population, step, right? So certainly, again, you have to sit down, you have to have that discussion with your healthcare person, you know. Policies are made at those high governmental levels, but patient care is done on a one-to-one basis. I'm sitting talking with you, I know who you are. If you're my patient, I know you, I know your family, I know what you like, I understand your process. And my job is not to dictate to you, you're going to take this now because I say so. When you ask the poor patient, what are you taking? Well, the doctor gave me this. It's not a doctor disease, it's you have the issue. So therefore, you have to be informed and educated, right? So you can sit and say, listen, I've read this, I've heard that, what do you think, doc? And then you can sit with your provider together and make a decision and say, this is probably good for me. These are the risks, these are the benefits, I'm going to take it. These are the risks, these are the benefits, I will not. I take the flu vaccine. Most years I do it. My husband lives with me, says he's not taking it. He don't take it. Right? He never take it. And I think, to be honest with you, we've probably gotten about as sick. He's probably been healthier than I do. But then again, I'm more in contact with other people. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
So, you know, I think you have to, but I would certainly say this is the first time they're doing this vaccine. And maybe hopefully there will be some other treatments coming up as well, which they will say, okay, this can also help mitigate contact, or if you get it, mitigate the spread of it. You know, Dr. Kevin Bethel has been talking a lot from people. Thank you so much. I had a chance to have a talk with him. And you know, as I said, his ideas may be unconventional, but I like the fact that he backs up his stuff with research. And he can show you the journal articles. And he's talking now with the wider medical community. And I think, you know, you may not agree with everything he says, but something may catch, certainly some vitamin D and zinc is not going to kill you, it only could help you as well. You know, so I would say, read, inform yourself, you know, and don't just do something because somebody says, or don't not do something because somebody says, you know. Pokey said, I ain't taking no vaccine, boy. I ain't taking that. They're like, boy, Pokey, I with you. I ain't taking no vaccine, boy. Or you say, man, I gonna take that vaccine. I sold you. Well, I sold you with you. No, you got to think for yourself. You got a brain. You don't have a hive mind. You have a brain. So think for yourself and inform yourself about it. But for me, I still remain a bit cautious and a bit concerned about that whole thing. Yeah.
Well, listen, Dr. Susan Williams-Lockhart, thank you so much. It's a pleasure having you again with us on the show. You're listening to The Hit Back with Nahaja Black, y'all. Happy birthday to my brother, Van, who is going to be very old. You know, I'm the baby, so happy birthday to him, you old guy. And hello to Mr. E.R. Hanna, the father of a friend, Tamika. Nice to hear from you guys. Doc, it's a pleasure to have you as usual.
Man, always. So we'll talk again, right? But take care and watch, listen, Saunders Beach, Goodman's Bay. Let's get you walking, man.
Yes, ma'am. Done. I just don't swim with the sharks that early in the morning, but we could go walking. Everyone, have a good day, everybody. You're listening to The Hit Back with Nahaja Black, Dr. Williams. Everyone, we will see you tomorrow. We're out.
Okay, bye-bye.